teams by leveraging people's strengths and offsetting their weaknesses. Again, by doing that, using a growth mindset and core value system as the foundation, and then facilitating that through effective communication, active listening, and transparent leadership strategies. So some of the things that we're going to be sharing today that you're going to be able to take away is understanding how important core values are in building and revamping, a workplace culture. So depending upon if you are a solopreneur or you work in a company, a lot of this will be able to relate to you, because you can relate this to even your own clients or people that you work with. And in many cases, a lot of this can even be personal in how you interact with your own families and friends and people in your community. I'm going to discuss today about 5 effective ways that you can foster engagement and how you could use that to build an interdependent work environment, and then how to sustain it going forward by leading from example and what that actually means. So let's take a look at core values. So for some reason, I'm not getting the chat box coming up on here. So I'm going to rely upon Marilyn if any questions come up. I don't know why it's not coming up for me here, but any event. Let me just get back here. Sorry about that. Oh, there it is. Now I have it. So now I can put the chat box. Hold on one second. I just want to get the chat box down there so I can see it. Perfect. So what I'd like to hear from you, what are core values mean to you? When you think about core values, what does that mean to you? And how would that relate to, say, the business that you're in? Is there any correlation to that, or is there a contrast? So when you think about core values, so what do core values mean to you? Like, what would those be? How do they play into the business that you're in? And how can that relate also to the clients you serve? Core values to me are what you find your best employees for, or fire your employees for violating.
You would fire your best salesperson. You'd fire your best engineer for violating those values.
Got it. So core values are important to you, Kimberly. Great. And they should be, because, again, core values are not about religion. It's not about politics. These are things that how we treat ourselves and how we treat other people. So when you look at this conference, the kindness conference, this is about putting people first, because if we don't put people first, how can we build an effective team to produce a service or product that could help somebody? Because in the end, it always comes back to people. So a lot of times we gotta start with the foundation of having core values. So think about if you were building a home and you want to build this beautiful home. If you didn't take the time to excavate the land to solidify that foundation, is it going to be perfect? No, but that you're going to do whatever you can within your control to make sure that you have a solid foundation. Because if we're going to frame out that house and then build around that to build this dream home that you live in, if that's going to sustain itself over time, we have to start with a solid foundation. Now, if that house is built upon a faulty foundation, what is going to happen to that beautiful home? It may look good from the outside, but it may be, crumbling down from within slowly to the point where it actually happens. So this is where values are very, very important, whether if you're just starting a business, whether if you've been in business for a long time, it doesn't matter. You can always establish a foundation around those values. Now, some of the things I wanted to point out here is 4 common core values that you find in organizations. That doesn't mean that every company or every person has these values, right? So, but yet we're going to have similar values. So let's take a look at the first one. That's integrity and being ethical. So integrity means, what would integrity mean to you? If somebody would like to volunteer. What would integrity mean to you if somebody would like to put in the chat box? Or you can, if you want to verbalize it, you can. What would integrity mean to you?
I'll just verbalize it because I'm chatting.
Sure.
And can't talk and chat at the same time.
Right. Go ahead.
So anyway, I guess for me, integrity and ethical is just, if I say I'm going to do this, that I do it, integrity. It's just showing up. ethical, meaning that I must have some sort of standards for myself that I stick to, and I bet I don't hurt anybody in the process.
Okay, so you're being mindful of the people. Again, we're not here to please and enable people, but we're here to be empathetic and kind, being a resource, right? Because there's a difference between, if we go out of our way to please and enable others, that is a codependent behavior or form of communication, versus empathy and kindness is more the example and having resources that can help people to help themselves. That would be more interdependent. So that's great. So somebody says, say what you do and do what you say. Yeah, keep your promises. So integrity, I'm going to give you another term. Again, it allows you to draw your own conclusion what that means to you. So integrity is doing the right thing when no one's looking. Mm-hmm. Doing the right thing when no one's looking. So let me give you an example. Say, like, for instance, I had in one time in my business where someone came to me for executive coaching. And when we were going through the discovery, they outlined all the specific things that were important to them. And this was a very unique type of situation that had to be addressed. Now, after we went through that, I said to myself, could I address this? And I said, yep, I could address it. But in the back of my head, I knew there was another resource, or in this case, an organization that would be better suited for this particular situation that they required. Now, I had a choice. Do I say, well, hey, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to take the business because, hey, it's business. Or am I going to do the right thing and do what's right for that person, or this case, this organization, and to ask if they're open for me suggesting another resource that I feel would be better suited for them? Now, a lot of people might say, well, God, why would you want to turn away business? But see, when you're coming from integrity, you're doing the right thing when no one's looking. See, in that case, I referred that person to that organization that would be better suited for them in that circumstance, knowing that it would come around from somewhere else where it would be better suited for me to help someone else. It's a term that I use, give without expectation, again, from empathy and kindness, not pleasing and enabling, and receive without resistance. So give without expectation, receive without resistance. So that statement embodies the concept of kindness, that we are doing the right thing for people first. Money and assets, whatever business we are in, are all a byproduct of that value that we give people. And if we put money and assets first over people, yes, we may think that we're still making money and we're growing our business, but in the long run, we're actually shortchanging ourselves, because it just takes one thing that could, destroy that reputation of your business if that were to come out. So again, this happens many times, but it's trusting the process of knowing that when you do the right thing when no one's looking, it always comes back to you from somewhere else. It may not be right away. It might not be from the person you did that with, but it comes back some way. Now, again, we can't change what our organizations are going to do. We can't control it. We can only control what we can do within our role and our responsibility in that job or in our business, whatever the case may be. But again, integrity and being ethical are two values that are quite common in most organizations. The key, though, is just because somebody says it doesn't mean they always do it. So the key is, are we actually living that? Are we being the example of that on a daily and a consistent basis, personally and in our businesses? So another one would be respect and understanding. Do we, in order to respect other people and understand them, we have to respect and understand ourselves first. See, oftentimes people get that confused. They may think that, well, I go out of my way to respect others. I go out of my other way to do whatever I have to do to, help them, a form of pleasing. But is that really helping them when you're not respecting or helping yourself? What if you're stretching yourself too thin, not doing the things that are needed to be done with you personally and in business, and you're constantly doing for other people? You're not really, in the long run, being an asset to them. It might appear so at first, but it's learning how can we respect ourselves and do a better job of knowing who we are, our role, our responsibility in whatever that is, and how we can now do a better job of listening to relate and understand others before we respond. That is coming from again, an act of kindness, an act of empathy, that we're being a resource for people rather than just doing for them. People don't learn if we just do. People learn from our example of how we can empower them to do for themselves. Doesn't mean we do certain things to help them and they don't do certain things to help us. That's what interdependency is. But we don't, but again, are we operating in codependency versus interdependency? So these are just, again, some values that you want to think about. Doesn't they have to be your values? Because a lot of times when Marilyn talked about being ethical, right? She gave the definition of being ethical. An act of empathy, an act of kindness to help them, not do for them. Great. So again, the key here is that if somebody has integrity and you're ethical, doesn't mean that other people are going to hold that as their core value. It can be that they're trustworthy and that they're honest. Would trustworthy and honest correlate or align with somebody who comes from integrity and being ethical? That would be a yes or a no. If anybody would like to answer that. Would that relate in some way? Those values? Yes, I get the thumbs up from Kimberly. That means she's got the eyes she's got the eyes going up and she's got the thumbs up. What she is spot on. So absolutely. It's again, the thing about values, it's not about that everyone has to have the same values as us, but they have to relate in some way. So trust and honesty can relate to integrity and being ethical. They share a lot of common ground with one another. If somebody, said that, hey, we're all about making money and we will do whatever it takes to make money at the expense of other people, even though they don't really say that, but yet they're doing it, then that would not be a form of integrity. So that would be a contrast if you were doing the direct opposite. Doesn't mean that, again, they're bad people. Now, granted, I wouldn't recommend doing that. But again, doesn't mean that you're going to be everything for everyone. So as people, we have to learn that we can't control what other people or other organizations do. We can only control what we can do through our actions, our behavior, our communication, our decisions. That's all we can do. And maximize that coming from those values and empowering people to do the same. But if we can connect with people with similar values, then we can come together in a more efficient way, whether if we're working together, whether if it's a partner or an alliance partner or a contractor you work with, whether if it's a customer you're serving or anything in your personal life. These are things that again, we can find somewhere we can relate on shared ground, a common ground with core values. Innovation is often one you see in organizations. Without innovation, we can't grow. So innovation means we have to have an open mind. We have to be open to new ideas. We have to take risks. So if you're an organization that doesn't encourage or don't respect and understand others, how can you be innovative? So again, it's looking at, are we practicing what we preach? We can say it, but are we actually doing it? That's the question. So this is where values, when we actually are living it and doing it, are so imperative in building that foundation. Accountability. Again, somebody talked about following through before. If we're going to follow through, we have to be accountable. If we make a mistake, that we own that and we do what's right to correct it. Again, we're not pointing the finger or blaming others or saying that, we can't reimburse you. We can't fix that because it's not under warranty. Again, it's doing the right thing, but again, within reason. Again, you're not, just, doing to please others and when customers find fault or people find fault, because again, that is codependent and that would work against you. It's again, doing everything within reason, again, allowing those values to really impact people in a positive way. So let's take a look at an example of core values in action. So Salesforce is a company that maybe a lot of you are familiar with. Salesforce is a CRM company, a customer relationship management. This allows companies to track their sales process, projections for, future growth in their sales, and, ways to track their clients, in terms of engagement, terms of their relationships, and follow up and so on. And a lot of these can be integrated into a lot of systems like, email autoresponders to help, keep in contact with customers and prospects. So these are some of the values that Salesforce incorporates: trust, customer service, innovation, equality. So take a look at trust. And what they state here is that they put people first. What would be the one word that would signify that they're putting people first when it comes to trust? There's a word there. What would that word be? You may know what it means, you may not know what it means. What would be that word? Okay, no worries. So that word is ohana. So ohana is a Hawaiian term for family. So Salesforce has strong family values. Even though they don't say family, trust means that you trust people like family. Now, some people may tell you that they may not trust their family, right? They may be their experience, but again, it's treating people like if you were treating them like family. And somebody put it there, Kimberly put in there, thank you so much for putting the actual term in there. So it's assessing what are your values and how do those values play out in the business that you serve, whether if you are the CEO, whether if you are in charge of a business unit, whether if you're a solopreneur, and then how does that relate to your clients? But if you work for somebody, it's okay. You can only operate from your values. How do your values relate to the organization? How do they relate to the people you work with? They're never going to be perfect. They're never going to be aligned 100%. But where can you find common ground to relate and work from to grow in an interdependent versus a codependent way? So here's an example of a trusted advisor that operates from core values. Now, God rest his soul, Tony Hsieh unfortunately passed away tragically a few months ago in a fire. But this was a brilliant man that really that the world lost a true trusted advisor. And I still can't believe it to this day that he's not here. But again, is anybody familiar with the company Zappos? I know Kimberly is. You're probably wearing their shoes, right? You purchase shoes from them, right? Yeah. So women, I know a lot of the ladies on here, they love shoes. You probably at one time, if not more, have purchased a pair of shoes from Zappos. Now, for the most part, most people that buy shoes from Zappos have experienced great customer service. Would that be safe to say, or maybe not? But for the most part, great customer service. So if a pair of shoes don't fit, they're something off, you can return them, get whatever you want sent back, what's going to work for you. So again, this was an organization that has been known for their customer service. And see, that customer service is what you get great customer service, but what you don't know is that it's always built upon a foundation of core values. When Zappos was formed, it was formed by the person who founded the company, who operated from a certain level of core values. This was a person that operated from true integrity, knowing that at the time, this person recognized that they were not cut out to lead a company as a CEO. They knew their shortcomings. They knew that they were good at the idea. They were good at certain areas that they could bring value to the organization, but leading the company was not in their wheelhouse. So what this person did is they went out to Tony Hsieh. Tony was one of the lead investors from a private equity firm that was now investing in Zappos. Little did they know that then Tony would end up becoming the CEO because he was better suited to take those values that resonated with him, not 100%, but there was a lot of shared common ground to build this company from scratch to where it is today, all from values. Hiring people with similar values, creating an environment that engages rather than disengages, not about who's right, who's wrong, not about who came up with the idea, what is best to grow the organization and to serve the customer at the highest level that it can in a realistic way. So these are the things that we can learn from in our own businesses, our own organizations, of how we can operate better when we can incorporate values first and then build upon that. So let's take a look at, fostering the engagement from those core values. So we know that again, if we're going to foster engagement, we have to again be able to, again, have that foundation that we talked about. And now we're going to have to create an environment that brings people together in order to do that. So when you look at, any size organization, whether if you're a one woman, one man show, you have a small business with a few people, maybe you work with alliance partners, you work in a company, it doesn't matter. Again, is that we got to be able to create an environment where there's opportunity. And the thing is that there is opportunity always around us. But many times as people, we don't see it because we're fixated on one thing. We could have self-limiting beliefs that are preventing us from seeing the bigger picture, or we're going through a difficult time in our personal lives, a difficult time in in the business that we're in with the economy. We're dealing with COVID. Again, we're getting caught up in the things that we can't control. But if we focus on what we can control during a difficult period, we can see the blessings and opportunities disguised of what we can learn to grow. So organizations recognize no matter what is going on around them or to them, negative or positive, that they're creating an environment where it fosters opportunity. This is how people come up with ideas, how we can be innovative, we can be creative. See, if we're going to bring people together, we have to make sure that people are operating from a place where they own their own role and responsibility and be accountable for it. That is an interdependent behavior, and that we're communicating that way. If we're constantly doing for people and not allowing them to grow, then that's working against us. But if we can provide resources, things that are in place to help people to help themselves in their job. Maybe it could be personal. Maybe somebody's going through a divorce. Somebody's going through, they're grieving a death. Your EAP provider, offers a wealth of information that could help people in that area. Now, if you don't have an EAP provider and you're not a big company, that's okay. There are resources that you can give to help people help themselves. We can't control what somebody else is going through. We can all be empathetic and kind to be supportive and provide resources that can help them to help themselves. So what resources do we have in place? We have to be flexible, especially in today's world. People are working from home, some for the first time, and just still getting used to the concept. Kids at home virtually learning. So it's not a 9-to-5 job. It can be different hours, but as long as that we're empowering people to own their roles and their duties and be responsible for it, that people are going to get whatever needs to get done and exceed that, when they could be, organizations could be flexible, allowing people to do that, to work within and around their family lives. And somebody said here, number one impact on employee engagement is the direct manager. Great. Thank you for putting that in there, Kimberly. Appreciate that. So, and again, we have to recognize that there's diversity. There's so much diversity in the world, not only with people with different ethical backgrounds, people that are maybe different gender types. There's people from different generational types. Whatever the case, we got to be mindful of that we're not here to judge or to be judged. We're here to, do what's best to grow as an organization, to grow as an entity, and to serve at the highest level we can within reason to the people we serve. So we have to respect that diversity, meaning that what programs do we have in place to educate and create awareness and help people implement new ways to further develop their diversity inclusion programs. So again, that's an HR thing. But nonetheless, if you're a small company or a one-person company, again, that you're taking that responsibility. You're doing it for yourself. And you're doing it, you're being the example for others to be mindful of that. And again, to foster engagement, it's about doing your best to leverage people's strengths. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. There's different personality types. People have different skill sets. It's never going to be perfect, and you never should strive for perfection. It's about progress, but doing our best to find out where people's strengths are and weaknesses and offset them to the best of our ability so we can create more harmony to interdependently get things done at a higher level and impact the clients we serve. So if you look at any winning team, and if I use a sports team as an example, you could have a football team. They may not have all the most skilled, talented players, but if they have the players that communicate well, they understand their roles and their duties, and they're responsible, they know how to pick up the slack if somebody is injured or out on a play to, fill in that role temporarily. Those are the teams that go to the postseason and win on a consistent basis versus the teams where it's all about the talent and that I'm right, you're not. It's my idea. It's not your idea. Give me the ball because I'm the one who's going to make it happen. Those are the teams that don't consistently win, even with the best talent, like I said. So again, it's recognizing how do you build a winning team, a winning family, a winning community, a winning anything when we can be aware and find ways through these 5 effective ways to bring people together through engagement rather than divide people or to disengage. So what are some ideas that we can do to foster engagement? Well, again, these are some ideas that you could take a look at. I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's again, that we have to value our people. We have to value people's ideas. And the way we're able to do that is through effective communication. Communication that is specific, clear, and concise. It's not about, again, assumption and speculation. Too much communication is assumed and speculated. It's like me coming in and saying, hey, Kimberly, this is very important. I need this right away. And she's like, well, wait a minute. I got 2 other things I got to do. And he needs this right now. Now she's asking herself, does he need this like at the top of the hour? Does he need this at the end of the day? Well, I have these 2 other things I got to do. So I'll get this at the end of the day. Then she turns it in at the end of the day. I might be upset because I needed it at the top of the hour. But was I specific and clear to her? No. Was I mindful of the things that she was working on because I didn't even ask her? It would have taken an extra 5 or 10 seconds to say that we could have been more specific and clear, and then we would have found a common ground where she could get her things done and still get the thing that I required done, and would have saved a lot of grief and hassle and time. Communication is key when it comes to engagement. Core values, again, play an important role behind the scenes when we look at that. So again, it's looking at some of these bullet points and finding out, what can work. Daily and weekly huddles. When we talk huddles, this could be a 5-minute where we get together and we were very specific on our roles and duties and what we're all responsible for to come together. That could be on Zoom. It could be on Microsoft Teams. It could be on Slack. Again, it's not one size fits all. Everyone can communicate in different ways. Different generational types receive information in different ways. So it's finding like what works collectively overall for the team. It's not going to satisfy everyone, but for the most part, people are going to be okay responding that way. It's, again, always reinforcing people's contributions. So again, it's looking at like how people operate. How does that align with those core values we talked about? It's working on, people that work for you to outline their strengths and weaknesses. What are certain goals they can strive for personally and as a team, and matching those behaviors and strengths to the best of your ability to bring out the best in that person, not to be the best, but to be the best. So how and what do we do to match our core values? So again, good question. So again, it could be through an assessment, a survey, not a survey, but an assessment to find out what are people's values and finding out what aligns in some way. There's going to be some common ground where as a group or as an organization that we can do. If we don't ask, we shall not receive. It's not a personal thing. It's asking somebody like, hey, what really drives you? What's important to you? But you'd be shocked that a lot of companies don't do that. They don't feel it's necessary, not realizing how important behind the scenes this can play for people to contribute, do their part, produce at a higher level, be efficient, and so on. So the key is that there has to be constant communication. You're not telling people just to tell them. You're recognizing people where credit is due. And you're not necessarily doing this in front of another group of people and making other people feel like they didn't do their part. You're doing it one-on-one. And you're always doing it from a place of how we can work together to make it even better. Or even if somebody is not doing their part, how can we work together for you to maximize this area that you're good at? And what resources can we put in place to help you do that? So you're recognizing that, hey, you have to be responsible where you're slacking, but where we can pick that up and do that together. It's not you, and making them feel defensive. So again, this is where communication is so important. How we use our words, our tone, the way we our nonverbal communication. Okay, now if we look at the reality of the new workplace, well, we live in a telework world now. Not necessarily it's telephone, right? It's digital. It's Zoom. It's Microsoft Teams. It's all these different platforms, different apps that we can communicate with people. We could track our projects. We could track our workflow. There are many tools and resources to do that. We don't necessarily have to be in the office for everything that we do. Now, I'm not saying that you never go back in the office, but it's to say that what is going to be the best way of utilizing your time and valuing that time to make people more efficient. So again, this is where values again and communication play an important role in making sure that we are equipping our people with the right platforms to do that. Allowing artificial intelligence to handle mundane tasks, things that can be automated, yet still allow us to do things that we can still have that personal touch with people that play to our strengths. So again, knowing how to find that harmony with AI and people. Too many companies a lot of times put everything into AI and take people out of the equation, thinking that is going to save them money and that's going to make things more efficient when it's not the case. I don't know about you, but I don't like getting whipped around on some automated telephone system that asks me some question over and over again after I answer them. That's not probably a good way, but yeah, it's finding the best possible way that we can serve people the most effective way. It's never going to be perfect. So what is interdependency in the new workplace? What does interdependency mean to you? What would, we talked a little bit about it, but what would that mean to you if somebody would like to volunteer? Kimberly?
Yeah, for me, I think it's about working together for mutual benefit, making the pie bigger, making the rising tide that lifts all boats.
Absolutely. So again, it's understanding your role, your duty, your purpose, what drives you, those values that are the underlying theme. How does that relate to the business unit, the company, the customers? How does that relate to the people you're working with? And communicating that in a very consistent, specific, concise way. Doesn't mean the other people are going to do the same. Maybe not right away, but by you being the example of that may get people to do that in time. Interdependency doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time. It's a process. It's progress in motion, but it always starts with us, regardless of our position, title. It's an action. That's what leadership is. It's an action. It's not a title. So if we're going to be able to work together, we have to assume that responsibility ourselves, not thinking that it's got to come from somewhere else. And then when that happens, then I'll do it. That day may never come. So this is why that we got to just do it for ourselves, regardless if the organization supports it or if other people are going to do it themselves. Again, we can only control what we can and know. We can't, everything else we have to let go. So again, when we look at interdependence in the new workplace, it's again, being that example. People learn from what they observe. Think about a child growing up. When you were growing up, part of you became what you observed in your parents, your mom and dad, or somebody that raised you. Some of the values that you picked up were a byproduct of the values that you saw in one or two of those parents. Now, sometimes it could be the complete opposite, but nonetheless, that again, people observe from what they see in others. So the key is that how are we leading ourselves as the example? We can't give what we don't have. The more we can nurture and grow ourselves, the more we can be the example and be a resource for others to do the same. So this is an individual responsibility that if we're going to be striving for interdependence, that we take a more active role in doing that. And again, finding ways to be more, use active listening to relate and understand versus respond to be more effective in our communication. And again, recognizing the difference between empathy and kindness versus pleasing and enabling. One being interdependent, being a resource, an example. Another that you just do, right? It's like a mom who does everything for her children, neglects her career, neglects her health, thinking that she sacrificed herself to do what was best for her children. What she didn't realize was, flash forward 20 years later, those children now are codependent. They're not self-starters, and that could work against you. So a lot of times it's just being aware that it's better to be the example rather than just do every time in every situation. All right, so to sustain this, from those core values as the foundation, again, we got to be consistent, like we said, with that validation, with the leading by example. Scratch validation. There is no validation. Now, you don't want that. That would be a self-limiting belief, the need for validation. Something that I know very well because I suffered from that for my first 30 years of my life. So this, again, I'm speaking from experience here with everything I'm sharing, because I went from a codependent to an interdependent after the age of 31 years old. So I learned the hard way through experience, both personally and in business. So these are some examples of leading by example for higher engagement. Again, it's operating from a growth mindset, which means that we learn how to be present. How do we be present? It's learning how to breathe. It's learning to use meditation, journaling, disciplines that you do every morning, that you can meditate, journal, wake up earlier, read every morning, whatever habits and disciplines over time that can become a pattern to serve you to learn how to be more focused in the moment will help you to operate from a growth mindset. A growth mindset recognizes we grow from our experiences. We don't allow those experiences to define and to rule us. It allows us to grow and become more as a result of it. It's committed to the process, meaning that we're not tied to expectations to outcomes. Expectations go unfulfilled, whether if we don't fulfill them or others. We commit to a process of what we can control in the moment, letting go of what we can't, and trusting in time the puzzle pieces will reveal itself to connect the dots to the results we seek. So it's learning to be present as much as possible, controlling what we can't, letting go of what we can't. And again, accountability is going to be key, whether if you have an accountability partner and yourself, to be consistent with those disciplines to lead by example. And again, even though we might be competing against other companies, it's not about competition itself. It's about how do we collaborate? What's best for people? Doing the right thing when no one's looking. We talked about integrity as a core value. Collaboration is the new way of consciousness, capitalism moving into this decade. And, maybe not everybody's on that boat, but a lot of people are jumping on. And I think a lot of people here, if not all of us here, are on that boat of collaboration versus competition. And with that being said, that leads, I normally would spend an hour with this, but I have another presentation I got to jump on here in a few minutes. But I wanted to leave a couple minutes to answer any questions that anybody has. I normally would, if I made this an hour, I would have made it even more interactive, meaning I would have encouraged more questions because we would have had more time. But I obviously, because of the time I only had, I wanted to provide as much value as I could to at least touch on all the points that could help you in why you do what you do. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. Yes, Kimberly.
So everybody says trust and respect for the individual are part of their core values. How do you really know what companies' real values are?
Well, you can know that by their behavior, their actions. The things that if they say what they do, are they really doing that, right? It's like back in 1988, 89, whatever the date was, when Exxon had that oil spill off the coast of Alaska. They talk about that they do what's right, for people. But they clearly did not do that, right? They didn't take the environment or people into consideration. They were avoiding the issue for 2 weeks before somebody actually said something and just telling people what they wanted to hear versus what they needed to hear. They didn't assume responsibility. So again, I'm not putting anything down on Exxon. Every company is guilty of these things one way or another at some point. So again, it's the actions, the behavior that you see. Words are just words, but if the actions don't support what's said, then there's your answer.
Yeah, I love that. I think the real values and culture is the stories you tell the new person on their first day at work.
Absolutely. Great. Any questions else I can answer? I have 2 more minutes and I can answer, and I'd be more than happy to jump on later or answer questions offline through Maryland as well. Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
This is not a question, but I would love to see how you reflect on what I say from your experience. I really love what you mentioned about appreciating contributions. I have been a corporate worker. I'm not in the corporate business anymore, but I worked there as a consultant for many years. And one of the things that caused a lot of suffering in me is really this, it's a combination of 2 things. One is how managers and people, as part of the culture, is people are not really used to appreciating contributions, big or small. And performance reviews, used to be about, it's sort of